Hello, spooky friends, and welcome to another episode of Storytime with the Scariest Podcast.
Woo!
I'm Robin Grace, this is Adam Diaz.
Hello.
And we're here to read you folks some homegrown horrors. Adam's going to tell us what homegrown horrors are.
Homegrown horrors are the wonderful stories that you folks, the listeners and or viewers, have sent to us. They can be supernatural, spiritual, sometimes coincidental, and those are usually really funny, sometimes true crime, sometimes extraterrestrial in nature. But they are your story, your friend, your family member that you have decided to send to us, and you have said, hey, you can go ahead and share this on the show. Robin, if someone had a story like that, where could they send it?
You can send it to our email, storytime@scariest.com. You can also go to our website, which is scariest.com, and fill out the contact us form there, and it'll send it to us that way.
Indeed. So there's many ways to get a hold of us. However you would prefer, go ahead and send it on over, and we will add it to the queue.
Yeah.
I'm going to start. This first email subject is doppelganger or clone can read on podcast. Well done with your subject. We appreciate it. Starts out like this. Hello again, spooky family.
Hello.
Hello. And everyone else out there, yell hello. It's me again, Chaboy, coming to you with another tale of my interesting paranormal experiences. Let me start off by giving a little background. When I was just a little one, I used to be super religious, to the point where I would go to church alone on Sundays and Wednesdays. I went every chance I got, but as I got older, I stopped going as much. When I became of working age, I stopped going altogether. Anyways, for my story. When I was about 7 or 8 years old, I used to go to this church that some of my aunts and uncles went to. So when the church services were over, our family would get together for lunch, and all the cousins would come and hang out. This particular Sunday, all the adults were busy, so we asked if all of us kids could hang out after church. Our parents agreed, and we all went to my uncle's house. He had to run errands, so he dropped us off and instructed no one to go outside while they were gone. Growing up, were you allowed to go outside at all?
No.
See, it's kind of weird because although I was a latchkey kid, so I could come home, unlock the house, go inside and lock it, I was allowed to go outside as long as like someone's parents in the nearby neighborhood were home. But then when I was like 7, we moved to a more remote location, so I was allowed to go outside as long as I was going to like a friend's house. So I know it's a lot different now, and I was wondering when that started to change because I was born in 85.
When I was younger, I think we were allowed to go out into the yard and hang out because we lived in one house, right? And there was a little yard that we kind of shared with a neighbor's house. And so we hung out with the neighbor's kids and our downstairs neighbor's kids. But when we got older, we moved to a different house that was in bumfuck nowhere. And when we moved there, we weren't allowed to leave the structure unless my parents were home. So
I understand how rules change based off of whether or not there's like a neighborhood structure where like another adult could be present to watch the kids. So, and having like the built-in like nearby friends of like, just play with the neighbor kids, you know, rather than like.
And they were the same grades or in like the same schools. So if we were in elementary school, they were also in elementary school, but I think they were a little older than us. And then they had a kid that was in high school. So, my older sister could hang out with the kid in high. It was like, it
worked out very well.
And what's funny is I have another set of friends that I grew up with that same, kind of thing where the older sister was the same age as me and the younger sister was the same age as my younger sister. So we were in all the same classes with each other. So we kind of grew up through middle school and high school and stuff. We went to the same middle school, which was like Catholic school.
It's funny how that winds up happening. And I think that's how you wind up really clicking with certain friends. It's just like, hey, like, I have an older brother that's just as old as your older brother. Maybe they can hang out. And if those people wind up becoming friends, then you're like always hanging out together.
Yeah.
So that's what happened with my friend Lee and I. So Lee's older brother Ryan was friends with my brother for the longest time. And I was best friends with Lee, like still to this day, even though he beat me in fantasy football. Fuck you. Yeah. Anyways, let's get back to the story. That was a fun little tangent.
Yeah. I was like, what was the story again? No.
All right. So all the cousins are gathered into the uncle's house and the uncle is gone. No adults are around, but they're not allowed to come outside. My uncle had a 2-bedroom home, but as the family grew, he converted the living room and kitchen into a bedroom and converted the carport into the new living room and kitchen. There were 2 large windows, one to see the yard, the other would see the road. Since we had just gotten out of church, my girl cousins were all in dresses, so naturally they went to go change into something more comfortable. I was sitting on the couch in the living room when I see what looks to be my cousin outside the window, standing in the road in the red dress she was wearing to church.
Oh, it's like It Follows.
That's just, I mean, that's a little bit different than It Follows, but yeah, like, that's super creepy. Remembering my uncle urging us to stay inside, I call out to her, expecting the figure outside to turn and look at me, But suddenly I hear my cousin come running out of her room wearing a t-shirt and jeans. I turn around and see my cousin. Super confused, I asked her if she had been outside since we arrived. She replied, "No, I've been inside because my dad said we couldn't go outside." I then explained to her that I had just seen her outside in the red dress she was wearing at church. We both stare at each other in silence when suddenly we come to an unspoken agreement. Even though we weren't supposed to go outside, we were going to go outside and check on what I had seen.
I've done that before, where you parents are like, "Don't go anywhere," and they're like, "Well, you're not home, so I'm going."
It's like, as soon as you fucking leave, I'm going. Like, that's on you. So we walk outside, holding our breath. We look into the yard and see nothing. After we walk around the house to make sure there was no one hiding, we make our way back to the front and see my other cousin outside, and he asks what we were doing. I explain to him what happened when suddenly he gets quiet, staring up the road at a stop sign. I turn to look where he was staring, and I see the girl in the red dress facing the other direction away from us. I turn to my cousins to confirm we were seeing what we were seeing, and when I look back at the stop sign girl in the red dress, she was gone. I wonder if they saw her disappear, if they all looked away and they looked back and she was gone or not.
Yeah.
That's all I got for you in this installment. I just want to take a second to thank you first of all for reading my stories, and secondly for everything you do. From long nights to long drives and everything in between, this podcast, scratch that, this whole community, you've truly created a blessing.
That's
Thank
so
you
nice.
so much.
Thank you. I mean, really, this does remind me of It Follows, because there's a scene in it.
It's not following. So that's what I'm saying. It's not like It's Follows.
No, but it's just like, there's a scene in the movie. If you guys haven't seen it yet, it's been too long. I don't care if this is spoiling it for you, but there is a scene where they see one of their friends. They're all on the beach, hanging out on the beach, and you see their friend standing off a little bit towards like the woodsy looking area part of the beach.
Approaching them.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, okay, what's their friend doing there? And then you see their friend floating past.
Yeah, they float by because they're on the lake or the beach or whatever.
Yeah. And so,
you're like, oh, there's two of them.
Yeah,
this is about to get rough.
Yeah, so it's the thing that's coming to get them. And that's just what it reminded me of when it's like, I saw my cousin outside, but then the cousin comes running out,
right.
You know.
It was the it that follows.
Yeah.
So that's certainly definitely creepy. Maybe it was just some other girl in a similar dress. Can't really tell for sure when you're a kid because you can't go and chase someone down and be like, what the hell are you? But it's certainly something that clearly stuck with you and is super fucking creepy.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that with us. We appreciate it.
All right. So this next email comes from Erica, and the subject is La Llorona stories. It begins, "Sup, spooky friends."
Sup.
That's us and you.
Say sup.
The spooky friends.
Everyone say
oh,
sup.
Sup. It would be funny if so many people were fans of this show and you just heard sup around the world.
That would be kind of insane. I saw a cartoon. Side note.
Oh, God.
Very
Sidebar.
quickly. When I was a kid, there was a Garfield cartoon. It was like Garfield and Odie doing silly stuff. And they got control of a television program at one point. And it was different from the normal television programming. And then they heard this sound right when their show started. And Odie, the dog, was like, what was that noise? And Garfield's like, it was the sound of everyone changing their channel at the exact same time.
Oh, my God.
I think about that every time we go live, in fact. So.
All right. So the email continues. It's your girl, Erica, back with another story.
What's up, Erica?
I recently sent you a story about my haunted San Francisco apartment. It might be more notable that I talked about my brother's farts in that particular email. That's the one where the brother just tortures her with all the farts.
I remember. We were talking about farts during the break, too, so that's just such a perfect transition.
I can't believe I got the wrong paranormal activity in that story, but it was the cabinet door one, or the second movie. Also, I definitely got, quote, when in doubt, sage it out, from another podcast, but I'm not sure which one. Maybe it's And That's Why We Drink, which is so funny because, I've heard about And That's Why We Drink so often. Shout out to them. Anyways, I mentioned that my mom has a ton of stories and you wanted to hear her La Llorona story. That one is kind of short, so I also am sending you a similar La Llorona adjacent story from my dad as well. It's a 2-for-1 special, just in time for Cyber Monday, or Christmas in this case. Oh my gosh, how many weeks ago was Cyber Monday? 4 weeks? Almost, maybe?
Yeah, maybe.
A little less?
I think it's right around 4 weeks,
All
maybe
right.
a full month.
The second story will be long, so I'll make sure to let you know where you can split the story if you want to. That is so cool because we totally appreciate that, and it makes it so much easier on us when we're trying to figure out which story we're going to read where. So let's get to it. Okay?
Let's get started.
This story is not as detailed because my mom hates talking about it. It still gives her the shivers, and she has only discussed it on a handful of occasions after we pester her. My mom grew up in a town tucked into a tropical-ish area of Mexico. There was a mango tree in her yard that she loved, and a river ran behind her house. The river was small enough where she could get across it in the dry season, but large enough that it was a drowning concern in the wet season. That is super scary. She is one of 10 children.
Nice.
And is 9 of 10 in the birth order. So she's the youngest, second to youngest.
Gotcha.
There's a fairly large gap between her and her next oldest sibling, so she grew up taking care of my tia, or her baby sister, often when my nana would work, and it was usually just the 3 of them at home. As a bit of a backstory, my nana worked in a restaurant or something of that nature, but she was also known as a healer in the community. She was really good with herbs, natural medicines, and would sometimes do cleansings, so sometimes she would leave in the night to help sick people, etc. One night, my nana was called away to help the neighbors who had a cold or a tummy ache. I don't really know, but that's not important. She was gone. So my mom and my tia were at home trying to get to sleep when my mom heard a woman crying from the direction of the river. If you hear someone crying from the direction of the river, okay, realistically, you'd be like, oh my God, are they okay?
Does
What's
someone
going
need
on?
help? Yeah.
Because you don't immediately go, it's La Llorona, ignore it, even though you probably would want to, and that's the smarter decision. But I feel like for me, human instinct, you're like, I need to check and see if this person's okay.
What if there's actually a person who needs help and you're like,
Yeah.
Not today, river demon! And you just don't go and help them.
And then they die.
Yeah, and then they become La Llorona, and it's your fault.
It's just scary. I don't know what I would do in that situation. I would probably go and check. I know I always yell at the TV when we watch horror movies, like, why would you do that? But then if it were you and you think realistically, you would probably go and check it, you know? Right. So thinking it was her mom, my mom tucked her baby sister into bed and went to peek her head out. She saw nothing, but kept hearing crying. It sounded close enough that she thought she would be able to see her, but all she saw was darkness. The crying subsided, and my mom sat there worried that my nana was hurt or something, until she walked in the door. My mom explained what she heard to my nana, who was visibly upset by the story, and said, quote, if you hear that again, don't go looking for anything, just hide, end quote. So my mom hears this crying on and off at night for a few days, until one night when it sounded like it was right outside.
That's fucking terrifying.
Against my nana's advice, my mom peeks out and she sees a woman dressed in white wandering the riverbank just beyond her favorite mango tree. The woman's body looked like it was almost glowing in the moonlight, and the dress looked as though she had been walking through mud and was dirty at the hem. She's taking in the scene when she hears that she's not just crying, but she's actually crying out for her children. Suddenly, she feels an arm around her waist as my nana scoops her up and slams the shutters closed. My nana is pissed, partially at my mom for disobeying her and partially at a ghost for trying to take her children. I never met my nana, unless you count meeting her ghost as meeting her. But if she is anything like my mom, she would absolutely try to go fisticuffs with La Llorona to defend her kids.
That's adorable.
My mom recalls my nana calling over some of her friends the next day and then planting things in the garden and doing a ritual. But she doesn't really recall those details much since she was just a little girl. She also doesn't remember hearing the crying after that. Imagine her terror when her schoolmates told her the legend of La Llorona. She said, and I quote, I was trying not to shit my pants as my friends described the story because it was exactly what happened to me. My nana would either take the girls with her after this happened, or it would, or would make one of her older children stay with them so they would never be home alone again.
That was pretty good.
I think the nana's pretty badass for taking care of her kids, you know, and making sure, like, yo, I am a healer. I know some weird stuff happens, and you need to stay away from that stuff.
Right.
It's just
Put your foot down, Nana.
It's a scary experience, but it's so cool to have someone in your life who's like, no, that's not happening to my kids, you know?
That's what, like, when you watch horror movies, there needs to be a character like that. Someone who has the knowledge or the courage to stand up to, like, whatever thing is terrifying you in that movie. And that's like kind of what drives the story forward. When it's a movie where everything seems hopeless the whole time and then they lose, it's like, well, I wasn't really scared because I never thought they had a chance. But when there's that tension because someone like brings hope to the situation, it definitely makes things much more compelling. And it's definitely that way for, a story in real life.
Like when they bring in Ed and Lorraine Warren, you're like, things are going to be okay.
You're like, okay, these people have a chance now. That type of thing. That's why I didn't like the movie Sinister. Because there's no chance. The whole premise of the movie is like, okay, well, as soon as you see him, like, you're done. And then there's like nothing that he stumbles upon where it's like, here's how you could save your family. It's like, no, you're fucked.
Which is the one with the red demon?
The red demon is Insidious, I think.
Okay. Is that the first one?
Yeah, the first one. So, but yeah, thank you for sending that first part of your story, and we will get back to your story soon. Yeah. Should I go ahead and read one of my short ones since your next section is actually rather long?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, so I'm going to actually move into my second one, and this one's subject is My Mom's Story - The Ouija Board. It goes like this. Hi, Adam and Robin. Hi.
Hello.
Side note, thank you for such an awesome podcast, a.k.a. the only podcast I listen to.
Oh, that's so sweet.
I like that you had Hi, Adam and Robin, and then a side note, because that's really our style. It sincerely is. It then says, okay, well, this is my mom's story on the notorious Ouija board. Dun, dun, dun. I remember her telling this to me at a young age, and then I just started listening to you a couple of months ago, and this came back to me. Let's begin. My mom's friend, another friend, and my mom... Her friend decided to use the Ouija board and contact the recent death of the other friend's daughter. The other friend's daughter was brutally murdered near that home, and that murder case took years to solve.
Wow.
Anyway, my mom and her friend were just messing around with the planchette, and it did not move because of the friend. Mind you, they were getting very little energy. Her friend moves it to goodbye, but my mom kept playing. My mom had one finger on the planchette as it flew across the Ouija board. She asked who it was. It was the daughter of the friend who was murdered. The friend sat there in amazement. Then she asked multiple different things and then ended on who and how were you killed. The spirit told my mom. The mother was crying and the friend and my mom just decided to say goodbye. My mom and her friends never told the police due to concerns about insanity. The police took months to solve the case, and this gets creepy. It was the name the planchette had spelled out. Well, this is my story, but dang, she has so many stories, and I'm trying to get her to send them, so I will try to work some magic. Enjoy.
That Abigail. Thank you so much, Abigail, for sending that. It's just so mind-blowing, and it's really hard when you hear this or find this out via supernatural paranormal means, and it's something where it's like, I can't go to the police. What am I going to tell them? We played this Ouija board, and this is the name it told us, because I'd be afraid, like, what if they think I'm the killer? What if they think I'm the one that did it, and that's why I'm...
Yeah, there's so much that would go into that thought process of, like, how do we even use this information at this point without, like, just trying to investigate it yourself, which is incredibly dangerous. So, at least the murder was solved. And I will say, like, it was solved in months, which does seem like an eternity, especially for people who were part of that family.
Yes.
But in the grand scheme of things, months to solve a murder where you have, like suspects that you have to go through and tons of witnesses is not bad at all. So I'm glad to see that justice was actually done. So.
And they were actually able to find the person, because there are so many cold cases out there that don't get that like satisfying end, the knowledge of what really happened,
right.
So I'm really glad that they were able to solve it.
Indeed. Me as well. So thank you for sending that in. We definitely want to hear the additional stories if you can get them. If not, we totally understand. Some people have stories that are really intense like that and they just don't want to share them. So don't pressure anyone, but hey, if they have a story and they want to share it, we definitely want to hear it. So, all right. Before we move on to the next part of the episode, we are going to take a quick break for a commercial. I do want to say that we were reached out to by Manscaped because we've been running this wonderful promotion with them for about a month and a half to 2 months.
Yes.
They reached out and they said that we have hit a threshold, which means that rather than it being a temporary sponsorship, it could wind up becoming permanent, which is super cool. We just have to email them back and go through some numbers and some details, but I wanted to bring it up because, one, you can still use our code, SCARyish, for 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. And two, I want to say thank you to everyone who went over to manscaped.com and used our code because they track it. And there was definitely the possibility that they said, like, hey, you didn't quite reach the threshold. Maybe next time, maybe we'll do something again in the future. But because of all the wonderful listeners and viewers who participate with things like this and promotions that were offered, we might have a shot at like a permanent sponsorship. And I just want to say thank you to everyone. So thank you so much. So,
are you going to do an actual ad for it?
I was going to say, now that out of the way, I do want to say that I use Manscaped stuff. I've been using it for years, actually way before they reached out to us. They're wonderful. I use the Lawnmower 3.0, which is great for sensitive skin.
He just started using the
nose trimmer.
The Weed Whacker.
It's called the Weed Whacker.
And he absolutely loves it. Wait, can I touch your nose?
Sure.
It feels pretty good in there.
She went inside it. She said, "Can I touch your nose?" Not, "Can I go inside your nose?" I mean, you kind of had consent. That was weird for me, though. But yeah, it's just
it
really
good.
Really good stuff. I really like their slogan. It says, "Your balls will thank you." I mean, they do. So
your lady balls can thank you too.
Exactly. You can use the trimmer for basically any area that has sensitive skin. That you want to make sure you don't get nicks or cuts.
One of our spooky friends did say it works great for matted cats. So if you have a cat that has long hair that happens to get knotted, it's pretty good at cutting those off.
Indeed. So go to manscaped.com, check out what they have, and if you would like to pick something up, take 20% off that and get free shipping with code SCARYISH, all caps, at checkout. Thank you so much to you all, and thank you so much to Manscaped for giving us this opportunity. And now we're going to go ahead and move into the normal ad break, and I think this might wind up being like a normal ad. We might need to pre-record one of these so it flows a little bit better, but hey, we did okay.
Absolutely.
So, all right, we're going to put some ads up about Meow.
Thank you so much for sticking around past that ad. Welcome back to the other side and to the other side of this story. So we're going to read the next story here from their dad. So this story is partly my dad's and partly mine. Hence, more details. My dad's Mexican and very Catholic and always told me to be more afraid of the living than the dead, which is why his skeptic stories were always so much scarier than my mom's genuine believer stories.
It's kind of the running theme on the show The Walking Dead also. Like, the humans are the actual monsters.
And Rick,
The Witcher.
Rick always has to ask them, like, how many have you killed, you know?
Yeah, the 3 questions, I can't remember what they are anymore because I haven't watched it in a long time, but yeah. Lots of shows have that theme so people understand humans are dangerous.
Yep. The email continues. Don't worry, Pops. I listen to true crime and paranormal podcasts, so I have a healthy fear of both. My dad grew up in a tiny town in Jalisco, Mexico, which is the state that created tequila. You're welcome. We've been there.
Have we?
Yeah.
No, we have.
Yep.
Nice. Go us.
Go us. In the late 90s, early aughts, my parents bought a house in his hometown, and we spent most of our summers there for a few years. The town is mostly cobblestone streets removed from the main highway by a tiny winding road that is about 10 miles long. I gave it a goog when I was writing this.
A goog.
I gave it a Jeeves. No. And the population now, 20 years later, is still under 3,700. The small was so small and tight-knit that the first time we visited, we arrived at 3:30 p.m., and when my mom and I went to the store for food at 4, the neighborhood ladies not only knew who we were, but also knew our names because they had heard my dad was back.
Aw, that's sweet.
I am choosing to believe that he was so popular because of his winning personality and not because he was some kind of man slut.
Wow.
The town was situated on a few small hills, so when you went downtown, you literally went downtown. You would descend the first hill, come across the church and plaza, then would ascend a subsequent hill, and it took about 20 minutes to walk across the whole town. It was a sweet, friendly, sleepy little town where the only crime was the layered, popped, collared polos the American kids would wear around in the summer. The early aughts, remember? I don't know. I'm trying to think of early 2000s, and I don't remember a lot of pop collars.
There was a lot of pop collars.
Were there?
Yep, yeah.
Okay.
I graduated in 2003, so early aughts to me is anything between 2000 and 2005, and I cannot tell you how many pop collars I saw. And most people acted like they were doing it ironically. They weren't. They were just a douchebag. If you popped your collar, I'm not saying you were a douchebag. People I knew that were doing it, quote-unquote, ironically were douchebags.
You just gotta keep it to popping bottles in the ice.
I hate you so fucking much.
Continuing on.
Kitten Slizzard.
Continuing on. So picture it. It's the summer of the year 2001, or maybe 2000. You only packed your coolest Lizzie McGuire-esque outfits. Holy crap, do I feel attacked right now.
That's funny.
Oh, man. And you are the popular cousin, because you managed to save enough of your allowance money to bring a Costco-sized box of baby bottle pops.
Nice.
To share with everyone. In short, it was an idyllic summer where I got to read books, in the sun and run around with my cousins until our parents yelled for us to come home long after sunset. Our little Scooby gang would get into all sorts of mischief. The number of flying chonklas. The number of flying chonklas we dodged that summer was inspiring. It was an even split with 3 boys and 3 girls. My cousin Miguel was the only one who lived in town and knew all of the people and most of the stories, at least as much as is appropriate for a kid. Our ages ranged from about 10 to 12 this particular summer, and the boys would pick on us girls constantly, and we would often return home to our parents sad and disheartened. This came to a head the night they told me that my parents had purchased a haunted house.
Oh, shit.
The house my parents had bought was ancient, and they eventually tore it down and rebuilt. However, what they didn't tell me was that the previous owner died in the house. Not only in the house, but her room was where my room was now. My cousins went on and on about how the spirit of this old woman wouldn't like me living on her turf, and it scared the crap out of me. After a couple of sleepless nights plagued by thoughts of ghost ladies and scorpions crawling in my bed, which was a legitimate concern, I asked my parents if I could sleep on the floor of their room. Okay, if you're afraid of getting bitten by or stung by a scorpion, why would you want to sleep on the floor? I feel like that's just like easy access.
I was going to say, it's kind of a foolish decision because when you're elevated and there's only like 4 legs in the bed to get you up there, unless you're like blanket hung down to the floor, it's a way easier way to get you to a scorpion, which just seems like a foolish way to go.
No, man. My dad asked what was wrong, and I told him about the quote-unquote ghosts. He was not pleased, and the next time he saw my cousin, he explained how stupid he was to think our house was haunted, when he was the one who has spirits outside his window. So the cousin is the one whose house has spirits outside his window.
Okay, gotcha.
All right. So my cousin lived on the other side of town from us and was one of the last houses before the road ended, and you ran into a hilly countryside on the left and a small dirt path on the right. The footpath would lead you to a tiny little graveyard where most of the locals were buried. If you opened the shutters from Miguel's room, you could see the front gate and the tops of some of the larger headstones and mausoleums. That would scare me, I think. Not creepy at all. So my dad asked, "How is it that you think our house is haunted when all the ghosts would have to go through your house to get here?" Miguel replied, "I don't know what you're talking about. The graveyard's not haunted. It's where people go to rest." My dad then tells us about how not only is it haunted by the spirits of the people who are laid to rest there, but he remembers being in my uncle's house as a young man, and one night he heard the wailing of a woman. La Llorona vibes, just saying.
Seriously, again. She's back. Guess who's back? Back again.
Oh, duh.
La Llorona.
In the beginning of this email, they say how it's like La Llorona-esque.
Right.
Okay. So I mentioned that the town was off of the main highway, and the only way to get to it is a serpentine road that connects the town to civilization. This area of Mexico is prone to rain, which makes this road beautiful, lush, and green, but it also makes this road treacherous. The story goes that a woman was taking her children into the bigger town nearby to see a doctor after her youngest woke up with an excruciating stomach ache. She was speeding down the road and went off an embankment. Her children died when they were thrown from the car, or maybe a horse or buggy. I'm not sure how old this legend is. She died from her injuries while searching for her children in the muddy hillside. Legend has it you can still hear her calling out to her kids on rainy nights. Sounds like a lot like La Llorona, no? Yeah, it does sound like La Llorona.
It does.
It definitely does, and the fact that your dad heard like wailing, it just makes me feel like it definitely is.
Stay inside.
On Saturdays, the town puts on little parties in the plaza and everyone shows up. There's a patio, bar/restaurant where the adults gather, a sweets shop where the kids get pumped on sugar, and the teens flirt awkwardly in the plaza.
Nice.
My dad was at one of these parties on a rainy Saturday, and in lieu of showing up tipsy to my older tia's house and getting a lecture, he went to his cousin's house, where my cousin Miguel now lives, to sleep off the buzz. He was just about to fall asleep when he heard wailing coming from the direction of the graveyard behind the house. Most of my dad's family is buried in the graveyard, and in his drunken state, he thought, "Shit, it's my grandma, and she's pissed at my drinking." Instead of being worried about the ghost of his grandmother wandering the graveyard, instead of, being at rest, my father was worried about catching a chancla to the face. The power of the chancla is eternal. My mom's never hit me with, flip-flop.
It's a Latin thing for sure.
Is it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Chanclas are very dangerous weapons. So.
It is just a flip-flop, right?
Yeah, it's a flip-flop.
Okay.
So, or as you would call them, slippers, which is
I
so
know.
weird.
In Hawaii, we just call them slippers. When I moved to the continental U.S., and they were like, they're called flip-flops because slippers are what you wear around the house. I'm like, you wear slippers around the house? What?
Slippers are the products known as slippers.
Anyway, he took a peek out the window and saw a woman with long dark hair dressed in white wandering the area by the footpath when he realized she was floating. He closed his eyes and prayed to all the saints he could think of until he looked out again and didn't see anything. My cousins instantly called bull on this story, and my dad said, quote, "Fine, next time it rains, why don't the boys have a sleepover at your haunted house and the girls will have a sleepover at our house, and we'll see if anything happens. If I'm wrong, the girls will do your chores for a week and vice versa," end quote. We all agreed, and about a week later, it rained all day, but let up a bit at night. The family gathered for dinner, and my dad reminded us of our bet, and we all excitedly chatted about who would experience more haunted activity. I just feel like it's definitely going to be the one next to the graveyard.
This seems like a premise for a movie. Like,
it
which
sounds
one
like
of
a
you
good
will be
movie.
more haunted?
Also, okay, I'll talk about it after. Anyway, the girls' sleepover was uneventful. There were no ghost sightings. But when breakfast was over the next morning and it was the usual time, we would go off and play. The boys walked up, tired and visibly frazzled. They were home alone in the evening the night before because my aunt was with my mom at our super cool sleepover.
It's funny.
They were pretending they weren't drinking margaritas while teaching us to dance. And the boys were at their sleepover doing whatever not as fun stuff that boys do at sleepovers. When they heard the wailing, they listened intently while this voice cried out into the hills. The oldest boy was voted to look, and when he did, he saw a woman near the graveyard in all white.
Now, can you imagine if this is just a prank that's ongoing and someone picks it up randomly at random times? Will you go to a river or a graveyard dressed in white and just scream for hours? Like, how much dedication would you have to have that prank just keep living on? Because the other alternative is it's a person that's not doing it as a prank, that's just been in distress for a very long time, or it's a ghost. And I feel like the least exhausting, I should say, is the fact that it's a ghost, but that's just me.
Some animals sound like they're wailing, though, too.
Some of them, yeah, but if you're seeing a person accompanying the wailing, then it's a little bit different.
Very true. All right. She had long, ratty hair and was draped in a shawl and veil. She cried out, "Miss," I don't know that phrase.
Miss Hijos?
That's what she shouted out. And made the other boys want to look, and when they did, she turned to look right at them. They slammed the shutters closed and hid, when suddenly they heard the laughter of children, and the other shutters around the house started closing on their own. Fuck that!
It's like, that sounds like she's calling out her kids, right? Is that just me? I'm not sure because I don't know the direct translation.
I don't know what we don't know
speak
Spanish. Yeah.
Man, my dad would be disappointed in me right now. But you didn't teach me, old man. This is on you.
The snark says my sons or my kids. That's what it means.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like my kids to me.
All right. So all the shutters start closing on their own. They sat huddled together until they no longer heard the cries and got brave enough to check again. She was gone. As my cousins recounted this story, we all nodded along when my dad looked at me and said, quote, "I told you. I knew that dress would look white in the moonlight," end quote. The boys stared at me and my long wavy hair when it finally clicked. That's right, friends. 'Twas I that night.
Fucking
not some ghostly woman. That's hilarious.
I fucking called it.
I was the tallest, so I got the part of La Llorona. I had put on my longest dress. It was light blue, and I thought it would be a giveaway, and wrapped myself in my aunt's doilies and wandered around outside the house, quote-unquote wailing, into the night until they heard me. We made sure to stop by the neighbor's house before and told them our plan so they wouldn't get spooked.
You know what I picture you sounding like? I don't know if you can picture a sound. Have you ever seen that video of the deer from the Nara Deer Sanctuary when it screams because the person won't give it a crack? It's like, like in the top of its lungs. I imagine that's you outside this house for like hours waiting for someone to come look.
Oh, man. Okay, so we made sure to stop by the neighbor's house before and told them our plans so they wouldn't get spooked. They were very much amused and in on the joke, as was my aunt, who almost let it slip when she came home post-margarita.
That's so fucking
My
funny.
other cousins were the ding-dongs who couldn't stop giggling, the laughter that they heard. They were the ones to slam the shutters closed around the house before they scurried down the hill to meet at our rendezvous point, the sweets shop at the plaza. When all the shutters were closed, I ran over to my dad, who, thank God, had the foresight of not leaving me alone in a graveyard at night. We shuffled down the hill where my cousins were waiting for us and grabbed an ice cream before calling it a night. That sounds fun. How the boys, 1, didn't also think to prank us, and 2, were able to spot my quote-unquote ratty hair, rude, and not my rain boots, I will never know.
Rude.
My dad has always been a prankster and is a really great storyteller, so he knew he wanted to help us when I started losing sleep over a haunting that just wasn't happening. The girls had been planning to try and scare the boys with La Llorona for a while, but we knew it wouldn't work because there was no river nearby, which is a common thread in almost all of the La Llorona stories. That's where my dad comes in. He told us the original legend of the Lady in White who haunts the road into town. While there is actually a local legend of a woman who died on a rainy night on her way to see a doctor, there were never any children involved. The most compelling part of this local story is that there is proof of a woman dying on the road into town, and she's even buried in that little graveyard I mentioned. The legend actually goes that she haunts the road on rainy nights. She hitchhikes and rides in the back seat or bed of a truck until you pass the point at which she died, when she just disappears. That's sad, because it's like,
the hitchhiker ghost.
You'll never
legend.
get there. You'll never get to your destination.
Right.
That's so sad. My dad claims that this has happened to him and my Tio on separate occasions, but he does love a tall tale, so it's your call on if you believe him or not. My dad's story of hearing her by the graveyard, however, was absolutely full of crap, but he was tired of them picking on us, and he does enjoy a good scare. Don't feel too bad for those boys, though. My dad bought them treats. No one did extra chores that week, and we still laugh about it. We became a lot closer, and while we still played pranks on each other and teased each other, it was never quite as scary. I have asked Miguel many times if he ever actually experienced anything while living close to that graveyard, and he says he heard the gates rattling and what sounded like crying sometimes, but he's only ever seen a La Chiona, or crybaby, which is what he called me. Rude. Once.
That's funny. Good joke.
And has never seen anything else. I thought this story would give you a giggle, and if 2020 needs anything, it is extra giggles. I'm still working my way through your backlog and just wanted to thank you again for putting on this great podcast. I listen when I work, and since I am working from home for the foreseeable future, you two are my coworkers now. That's cute. I wanted to give you a kind of odd compliment and figured this would be a good place to do it, so here it goes. I love the way you both explain certain things, specifically the things that, for those of us who grew up in the U.S., consider common knowledge or have a general understanding of. It never seems judgmental or weird, but more of like, if you don't know this thing, here's the context, which is really nice. As is obvious by these stories, I am a child of immigrants and grew up seeing how a person can be made to feel, quote-unquote, othered or less than for not knowing something they, quote-unquote, should. And it sucks. Sometimes people don't bother explaining things at all or do it in a way that makes a person feel stupid, and you don't do that, so thank you. Also, I've never felt more seen than when Robin talked about having to translate things for her parents' business. Girl, same. Like, sure, I'm 12 years old. Totes let me talk to this random person on the phone so they can explain the legal jargon in these contracts to me. Oh my god. Oh yeah, totally relate. I hated it at that time, but I kind of love it now. It definitely taught me a lot. So if you see me translating legal documents from English to Spanish in the special skills on my resume, mind your business. All this to say, y'all are great, and I hope you can keep doing what you do. I will try to write to you again soon. Happy holidays, and stay spooky, pals. Erica. P.S. Hey, Spooky Mom, I appreciate you.
Aw.
That's cute.
That was excellent.
That was a bunch of really good stories. I think that was...
I started to get the feeling like, man, this could be an elaborate prank. Like, if you have all these ladies together, why wouldn't you just prank these assholes? So, god damn it, that was funny. That was so good.
I never got to prank, when I was younger. We just didn't do that.
I did.
When we did sleepovers, it was 4 girls sleeping over, or 5 girls sleeping over and just chilling. It just wasn't anything crazy.
Pranking is fun. It just, you don't want to take it too far. You know what I mean? And that's just like the perfect wholesome thing where like they have a night of terror, which they deserve for being jerks. And then eventually they get let on in the joke where it's like, nah, it's just us, dog. And they can calm down about it. So that was excellent. And yeah, thank you for the compliment. We do try and make sure, you know, because like, my dad's Puerto Rican, Robin's parents are Vietnamese, so it's like we want people to understand like the context of something just because they're not from here, and it's nice to know that that is appreciated, because sometimes I wonder if people are like, yeah, we get it, like just fucking get to it, dog. And then I sometimes wonder if that's how it is like for people that aren't from the U.S., like, yeah, we get it, man, like not everyone that's outside the U.S. doesn't know what you're talking about, but it's nice to hear that. So.
Yeah, we try to, I don't know, imbue knowledge. We're because a lot of the times we're learning new stuff at the same time. And when I bring up, like, in case you didn't know, it's because I didn't know. Because I didn't know while I was researching, and I just learned that. And I think it's cool to kind of be like, I didn't know this. You guys, if you maybe you didn't know too. I'm freaking 31, and there's stuff that I'm learning every single week when we do all this stuff. So it's pretty cool.
I agree. I do the same thing. And sometimes it's like, hey, I have this random factoid in my brain, and maybe you don't know it, so maybe I can actually give it a purpose for once. So it's nice to either share those or learn something and then share that with you folks too. So either way, thank you so much for sending that in. All right, so we're going to go ahead and call that the end of the show. Thank you so much to everyone who sent in your emails. We sincerely appreciate it. If you have a story you would like to share with us, please email storytime@scarish.com or go to our website, scarish.com, and click on Contact Us. If you fill out that form, it comes directly to us. You can also hit us up on any of our social medias. Twitter is @ScarishPod, Instagram is @ScarishPodcast, and Facebook is facebook.com/ScarishPodcast. We hope to hear from you. Robin, if folks would like to donate to us, how can they do so?
You can go to patreon.com/ScarishPodcast. Those are monthly donations. Tiers start at $1. And at $1, you get access to exclusive merch. There is a form up there that you can fill out and kind of choose what past merch you can get. I think I'm going to end that form at the end of this month. So if you want it, get in on it now. So you can join for $1, get access to that, get access to ad-free episodes. And then you can also go to ko-fi.com/ScarishPodcast. And those are for one-time donations. If you're not into the monthly subscription thing, you can also do that. And all your donations go to helping us upgrade our studio setup, kind of keep us going, keep us motivated, give us a little bit of extra time to, I don't know, make more content, try to do more research, give us more time to sleep so we're not doing last minute
time
research.
To make the content.
And yeah.
Indeed. So thank you so much to everyone who listens, who watches. It is the holiday season. We hope you all stay safe. We hope you get to be with friends and family. And even if it's not in person, maybe Zoom call, any of that stuff is always very helpful or very fun. And if you're just staying at home and you're alone, I've had Christmases like that before, and they actually weren't that bad. So we hope wherever you are, you're safe and you're happy. And I think that's just about it for Storytime number 150. We've done 150 of these things. So Robin, go ahead and sign us out.
Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, keep on jingling on.
Ring, ring.
Banana phone.